Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him, and I write about movies for some places, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Yes, you are.
Damn straight.
I did a little differently that time.
You did. You're mixing it up.
Yeah. So this week we've got movies, as we always do. We have the Lost, in air quotes, George Romero movie, The Amusement Park. We have Changing the Game, which is a documentary about trans athletes. We have Undine, which is German. And then we have Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. But before we get to any of those, Megan, why don't you tell us the special thing that you got going on recently?
That sounds so fancy.
I know.
It's quite an intro. I like it. Yes, I am super excited to share that I was a guest on the Binge Movies podcast. It's bingemovies.podbean.com. You can find the episode. It is an epic 3-hour podcast with the host, Jason. Yes. Ooh. And we talk about Scarlett Johansson movies. We talk about 5 of them. And we dig in deep to her career and to these various films. And it was an amazing conversation. So I hope everyone will check it out because it is great. And he's lovely.
It's very exciting. Yes, I'm sure he is. You know what? Until you said binge, I always thought it was pronounced bingy.
Oh, boy.
Well. Just kidding. So, gang, let's kick it off this week with the Lost, in air quotes, George Romero movie, The Amusement Park.
That was rather dramatical.
Should we give it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. People have been talking about this movie, but I'll just go ahead and give you a little bit of the background. This is a movie that George Romero made in like 1973. He made it. It was paid for by the Lutheran Society. It was supposed to be a movie about elder abuse and ageism. And then they saw the movie and they were like, "Oh, fuck this!" Except in a very Lutheran way. And so the movie was shelved. It was thought lost. It was discovered in 2018 and restored by, I think Indie Collect is the name of the organization. And now Shudder is putting it out on their platform. And it's 52 minutes long, and it stars Lincoln Mazzal from Martin, if you've seen that other George Romero movie. A really good one, by the way. Gang, what did you think of The Amusement Park?
It's an assault on the senses. It's intense. It's like the sound and the sound design is really what I'm talking about when I talk about assaulting
really bizarre.
You. It's intense. As Shauna joked when we were watching it, it is not migraine approved.
Oh.
Yeah. If you have migraines, watch out, because there is just like a lot of just jarring sound in this movie. It is creepy, and it does make some pointed statements about aging and ageism and how we treat older people in society. I just wish it did that without the prologue and the epilogue that comes with the movie, which hits you over the head of exactly what it's doing and what the point of it is.
Yeah, it is definitely on the nose, obviously, because it wasn't intended to be a normal film. It would be interesting. I guess you could just kind of ignore it, but it would be interesting to see what it was like if it was just shown without the kind of bookended intro and outro. But yeah, I find this really disturbing, really chilling and unsettling. And the sound design is great. And the visuals too are, definitely make you feel claustrophobic and like everything is kind of coming at you. And it is a really jarring and scathing depiction and allegory for how we treat older people. I completely agree with you, Evan, and how we demean and disrespect older people in our society and kind of how see them as disposable. I will have to say this is also an extremely sad film. I've never shared this with you guys, and I've never shared this on the show, but I get very, very, very emotional when there are really, really nice people on screen. Like when bad things happen to really, really pleasant, nice, polite, caring, compassionate people. And this guy is like so nice, and he has like the best of, intentions to have this amazing day, and he wants to get outside, and he wants to talk to kids and read them stories and just have a grand old good time, and everything is just working to keep him down and just like torture him. And it just made me really sad. Like, it made me really uncomfortable and made me want to just like give him a hug. And I was very, very emotional and like on the verge of tears or actually crying. So
yeah. Did you want to give him a hug before or after the head wound? I'm assuming before.
I wanted to give him an air hug afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, plenty of bad stuff happened to him before that.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. One of the things that really, I don't know if moved me is the right phrase, but yeah, let's say moved me, is when they're, so it takes place at an amusement park, and it's sort of, basically what happens at this amusement park is he runs into all the things that elderly people get shit on for. He's on the bumper cars. Is that what they're called? He's on the bumper cars, and he, some other elderly couple has an accident, and he witnesses it, and he goes to try to explain, oh, I saw the accident happen, and that guy hit her, and he's the guy who, of course, is like, the fuck these old people, or whatever he says. And the older woman is like, no, like he put on his right blinker and he turned left. He's like, he's an asshole. She doesn't say that because it's a Lutheran film. I'm just guessing. But Lincoln Mazzal comes up to the cop who's like taking the notes, and he's like, oh, I saw what happened, and she's right. And he's like, oh, well, hey, are those your glasses in your pocket? Can you really see that far? And just like all the things that you've heard people hurl at elderly people to kind of discount their stories or recollections or whatever. And that part made me sad because I was just like, ugh. Now, I've known plenty of older people who, have gotten into car accidents, but like when you kind of see that dehumanization just like right there in front of you, it's really, really, it's a really well done moment. Is the short
totally
version.
Agree. It's a great scene, really haunting.
But I agree with both of you about the sound design, like just the constant amusement park music, sometimes cranked up to 11, sometimes like in the background. And the choice to sometimes have actors speak dialogue and then other times to have it. And I'm not really sure whether there was sound rolling and they were just moving their lips or there's just no sound, but sort of that nightmare scenario that you have like in dreams sometimes when you're speaking, but no one can hear you. Like that kind of shit happens. And then there's the scene where like the rich guy makes the servers turn his table around so he doesn't have to look at Lincoln Mazzal being poor, eating beans with white bread. Like, yeah, super, super eerie. And then the guy, there's the guy who like accuses him of being like a kid toucher, basically.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Disturbing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many disturbing moments in this movie. Like I was struck by the folks that get into the bumper car accident. One of them is the husband is taking an eye exam, and they're like trying to test his eyes while people are walking in front of the the sign that he's trying to read off of. And I thought that scene was extremely unsettling, intense, because like there was just no break in the action. There's just people constantly cutting into the frame, and it's so jarring and disorienting and frustrating.
And even right from the start, well, not even right from the start of the amusement park, when he tries to enter and like people are like selling off their like family jewels and like pocket watch, and they're only getting $5 and so they can get in, and they're like arguing with the guy. They're like, oh, come on, this is worth way more. And the guy's like, nope, only $5. And it's just, and then there's a sign that he sees. It's like, you can only ride this ride if you have an income over $3,500 a year, which, at the time then was very different than now, obviously. And, you can't ride this ride if you experience any of these things. And it's all like dizziness and, fear of the unknown and like all these things. And it's just,
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I had any criticism with this, and I don't really, this isn't really a criticism. It would be that it's the, is there an opposite of subtle? I mean, sledgehammer like? I don't know how you would say it. Yeah, overt. It's not opaque. It's crystal clear. What is going on. It's very well done. But the one thing we had talked about this off mic a little bit is that even though it's been restored, it still looks kind of crummy. And I wonder if it was shot that way, and this is the best they could do, or if it's not a great transfer. I don't know. I wonder what it looked like. I would love to see the before.
Yeah.
I guess
I'm very
my
curious.
point.
I'm always curious about the before as well when in restoration.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to get the Criterion treatment, but because they always do the before and after, because that's the kind of film company they are. But overall, I wouldn't say that I had a good time with the amusement park, but it's sort of like you can really just see how good George Romero was and how he does not get the credit he deserves as a filmmaker.
Agreed. Yeah, he had such an eye for societal commentary and for human observation, and translating that into his techniques. And yeah, I agree with you. I also think this is just also thinking about how this was lost for so long. And I was reading about this on Twitter because Daniel Krauss had found this. And apparently he'd been looking for this for a really, really long time. And so it's so interesting whenever there's, kind of whispers of a film and then someone finds it, like it's just amazing. And then we get to see it now. It's just, I don't know, there's something incredibly exciting about that. And especially from such, a groundbreaking and influential and important filmmaker. And this fits, like, even though this is very different and it's not, I read this before I saw the film that someone said this, this isn't traditional horror, but it still fits, right in to his work. And it definitely does. And it's horrifying nonetheless, even if it's not traditional, horror genre. I still think it is horror.
Absolutely. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I think for me, like to bring it to a close in terms of things that I have to say, like, it is horrifying in that all of these things that it points out are still problems that older people deal with. Like, there's nothing in here that you're like, well, that's woefully out of date. We don't have to deal with that anymore. It's like everything you see, you just go off and like check them off the list. Like, still people have to deal with all of these awful fucking things.
Yep. From the financial theft
absolutely.
And the, trying to push someone into a nursing home. Yep. It's awful.
For totes. Well, on that happy note, perhaps we should move on to Changing the Game. It's a documentary. It's about transgender high school. This is from IMDb, by the way. Transgender high school athletes from across the country compete at the top of their fields while also challenging the boundaries and perceptions of fairness and discrimination. Yes, that's accurate. It's nicer than it should be. Instead of perceptions of fairness and discrimination, maybe they should say dealing with transphobic assholes.
That would be more accurate.
That's dealing with bigots who are featured in the documentary. They don't get like equal time, but they do. Like, you hear the shitty sound bites and you see the interviews with people like the bigots who are like, and they talk about this in the film. It's like the adults are way worse than the kids in terms of like all these transgender high school athletes. They're getting bullied by the adults, by the parents. They're not as much getting bullied by the kids.
I mean, I'm sure they're getting it from the kids too, but the parents are the ones that have, the kids have social media and school, and the parents have like everything else.
The getting in, they feel entitled to get in these kids' faces and like just spew their rhetoric straight to their face without any kind of like filter or just inclination of like, gee, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
No, they don't fucking care. And they also have the power too to harass these students. Yeah.
But I also just want to say, parents who are harassing these trans kids, first of all, fucking stop it. Second of all, your kid is not going to state and getting the scholarship. All right. So just shut up. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, it's always, some douchebag, because I grew up in Indiana. So like, I just sports. It's always the dad asshole or mom asshole whose kid is like pretty good, but not great. Who's the fucking douche being like, why isn't my kid, starting? Because your kid's the sixth best person on the team, and there's only 5 people who start in basketball, so fuck off. Anyway, that's kind of separate, but not really separate.
Mm-hmm.
What did everyone think?
I liked this. I
movie?
thought this was, I mean, obviously because of the topic, it's really heartbreaking to see what the trans teens or athletes are going through. I mean, we live in such a transphobic society as it is. And then, and it's so difficult to come out and to deal in society. And then you're also dealing with this transphobic shit from other parents and from school administrations. So,
and from J.K. Rowling. Don't forget that.
Let's not forget her. Never. But yeah, this is a really intimate look at 3 trans teen athletes specifically. We have Mac in Texas, who's a wrestler, and Sarah Rose Huckman in New Hampshire, who's a skier, and Andrea Yearwood in Connecticut, who runs track. And yeah, I really, really liked this. And I think this is obviously it's important because we need more films on trans people telling their own stories. And that's really, really important. And this is, of course, really timely because, it's Pride Month and it premiered on Hulu yesterday when Pride kicked off on June 1st. And the other reason it's so timely, sadly so, is because there have been 144 anti-trans bills as of April of this year that have been introduced. And also because Governor Rick DeSantis of Florida just signed the latest anti-trans bill that targets trans athletes, especially trans girls. And so this is super important to be talking about this and to be hearing from trans teens. And yeah, so I'm really glad that I watched this and that this exists and that we can hear from the trans teens who just want to live their lives and
just want to be fucking
they
kids,
just want to
man.
compete in the sport that they love. They just want to live their lives. They just want to be who they are. And that's what we should be celebrating and supporting, not tearing them down. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Big sigh. There's so much that you've said pretty much everything I would have said, but I think the thing that always bothers me the most about this kind of stuff is, aside from the fact that it's, these people, in this case, you hear the parents mostly, it's hateful and fucking adults yelling at children just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Any child, but in particular, a child, and I say children because they're under 18, who are, dealing with something that parent of their cisgender kid, whatever, couldn't possibly imagine what this trans kid is going through. And you're just being like grow up.
Yeah.
Grow up, adults. I mean, it's fucking childish.
Also, it's gross too. It's like you have these adults that are obsessing about these kids' genitals. Like they're like all of their, like there's that woman who goes on that like really long rant about periods. I've never seen anybody be so passionate about how every female athlete should have to have a period. I couldn't even believe that rant.
Right. And the thing of it is, and this is what's real. And I'm so glad you brought up that scene, Evan, because it's so disgusting and disturbing. But on the converse flip side, actually, female students are not the only ones who have periods, because so do trans guys, if they haven't taken testosterone yet. And so that is actually not entirely true. And so it shows what a limited binary view of gender that is, and what a cis sexist way of looking at the world and people. And it's gross. And you're right. And why are they obsessed with trans kids' genitalia? Why are they obsessed with trans people, both kids and adults, going to the bathroom? Like, what the fuck do you care? Like, it's so stupid.
You're gross. Like you're sexualizing these kids, and it's just like it's super frustrating. I mean, and I liked that this documentary picks kids in different states. You can see how differently each state responds. It's like Connecticut is the most liberal of the 3 in terms of like they just let people compete in the sport with the gender they identify with. Great. New Hampshire's like, no, you need to have surgery, which is like a weird requirement to be like, yeah, you got to
Well,
have
it goes
that.
back to the genitalia thing, right?
And then Texas is just like, no, you can't. And I found that really interesting because we follow Mac, who is trans male, and he's forced to wrestle. He's forced to wrestle young women, and like no one thinks that this is fair, and everyone is complaining about it, and it's an infinitely solvable problem. It's like anybody who's upset.
That would require we actually acknowledge the dignity of trans people, that, you know, we should listen to trans people when they tell us their gender, like, and not question it.
Yeah.
So, you know, that would require that.
This situation does not need to exist. Like, you don't need to be mad that Mac is wrestling in the girls division, because Mac shouldn't be in the girls. Like, Mac should be wrestling boys.
Yes.
It is an easily solvable problem.
Yeah. And no, and I love that the kids also say that, like, you know, Mac is like, I don't want to be wrestling girls. I'm not a girl. I'm a boy. I want to wrestle boys. And, you know, so does Andrea, and so does Terry Miller, who is, you know, comes into the film because she's another trans teen in Connecticut who runs track. And they both are like, you know, we're trans girls. We're girls. And actually they say females. But yeah, so it's absolutely true. And this notion of fairness is really pervasive and insidious and problematic. And there's a really fantastic article, Jessica Luther, who writes about sports and also gender in sports, and she has a podcast on it too. She wrote a really great article at Vox about this notion of fairness in sports, specifically in relating to trans athletes, and how sports have never been fair. And we need to reframe our paradigm of what fairness is. And we need to have it be trans inclusive rather than, you know, exclusionary to trans people. And it's so true. And it's also really interesting thinking about Connecticut. And I'm so glad you brought up Connecticut, Evan. And also because, you know, we both come from Connecticut. But it is the most trans inclusive of the 3 states we see. However, what's really interesting is that Andrea Yearwood and Terry Miller have a lawsuit brought against them from some of the other students who sue them for running on the girls' track team, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's just not forget for a moment that if you just think about sports in general and gender in sports, and I'm just going to, you know, use one sport as an example. There are women in the WNBA who are far better than their male counterparts in the NBA. So, like, I don't even understand, like, it's a bigger conversation even than trans kids. It's like, there are women probably on college softball teams who are every bit as good as men in AAA MLB baseball, you know, who could probably hit a round bat with a round ball as well as, I don't know, I can't fucking think of anybody off the top of my head, but they exist. I mean, the whole idea that we just separate sports down, like, you know, gender lines is just kind of like,
well, the reason we've done that though is because of the exclusion of women, because women were excluded historically from sports and have been, you know, in many fields. So it, you know, it is kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, I get why it happened historically and it makes sense. And, you know, and someone in the documentary mentions this about, actually a couple people who are fucking transphobic and awful. They mention the fight for Title IX, and that's so true. Having said that, though, that's no excuse to be transphobic. If anything, trans kids and trans people have more struggles, so we should be helping them, not barring them. Like, it's so ridiculous and such, just such bullshit.
Well, let's go back to the screaming parents there for a minute then, and just say that my favorite part of this documentary is knowing that those hateful assholes who appear on camera signed release forms to do so.
You're right.
Because that's how documentaries work, and they will forever be on the wrong side of history. So fuck them.
Yeah.
It's so mind-blowing to me, because we hear from the parents of the 3 kids, and especially with two of the sets of parents, or the family members in Mac's case, they talk about how they're conservative. They talk about how they're Republican. And they also talk about the need to support your child and to advocate for them and respect them. And I'm like, yes and yes.
Yeah.
They get it, thank God.
Yeah.
And it's not a complicated issue as the parents reveal in the film. It's about supporting your kid. There's a quote, I think it's from one of Mac's grandparents, where one of them says, you got to feel good about yourself.
Yes.
It's not hard to figure out, people. Like, trans people want to be themselves, and like, you're preventing them from being themselves. They just want to feel good about themselves on a day-to-day basis. And like, it's really not a complicated issue.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Actually, I'm so glad that grandfather is in it, and I was ready for something awful because he misgenders Mac right away. And I'm like, oh God, it's going to be terrible. And that is terrible. But then he says this great thing about, you just got to feel good about yourself. And I was like, yes, that's it. You get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why can't everybody else? Because there's so many hateful people.
Well, I think we've solved the issue of trans kids in sports.
If only.
So, yeah. So does anybody have anything they want to add before we move on?
For me, there's one thing that I really liked. I mean, I liked that they include the stats in the documentary. I don't know if I needed more, but I feel like for me, this could have been tighter in terms of like editing to be more compelling as a story. I feel like there are parts where it was kind of punchy with its editing, and it was more compelling than other parts. But I do really like that they included the interview with Chelsea, who was the wrestler who was going up against Mac.
Yes.
To hear a perspective of someone who just wants to beat, they just want to be the best. And she's like, I want to beat Mac. I just want to be the best. And I'm going to like work my ass off for it. And it's like, she's not mad at Mac about this. Like, she's just as annoyed about what's going on, but like not mad at Mac because Mac's winning. She's just mad because like she's trying hard and she's trying to be the best and she's not winning. You know what I mean? Like, I think it was an important perspective to show like someone who's a peer who's not upset about this like bullshit policy at Mac about it. They're upset about the bullshit policy, period, but they also just are trying to compete.
Megan, anything from you?
No. Just, I think everybody should watch this.
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's definitely worth watching. And on that note, then, let's move on to a movie that only two of us watched.
I'm feeling the shade.
The shaming. Let the shaming commence.
This is what happens, though. Megan teed it up, didn't mean to tee it up. And I was just like, I got my driver right here. So speaking of sports metaphors from the last documentary. So this is the next movie on our agenda is Undine, which is a German movie by Christian Petzold. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but made the really great Phoenix, made Barbara, which is another great movie. Makes a shitload of movies, by the way. But Undine is, first of all, I should just Undine, I'll read the IMDb thing. Undine works as a historian lecturing on Berlin's urban development. But when the man she loves leaves her, the ancient myth catches up with her. Undine has to kill the man who betrays her and return to the water. This movie, that description and the movie itself is predicated on the idea that you are familiar with this myth. So if you're not, you might want to look it up beforehand, which is basically... Would you say mermaids?
Water
what
nymph.
would you say? Where
yeah,
water nymphs.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, I guess, mermaid, but more. Yeah.
Think of like Splash if Daryl Hannah had legs and no tail. She only had legs. That's what this would be.
Yeah, but basically, she needs to have a lover, a human lover, in order to stay in the human world.
And you will not be surprised to know, Megan. In fact, I think we talked about this off mic. This movie is right up my
I'm not
alley.
surprised at all. I knew you'd love it.
Plays by its own rules, but doesn't really make a lot of sense if you think about it too hard. But at the same time, who gives a shit if it makes a lot of sense? Because it's this sort of like magical, otherworldly, like tender story about love. And how Undine, you can kind of tell. So her first lover, Johannes, breaks up with her in the opening scene, and she says to him straight up, "Well, you know what I am, and now I have to kill you."
I love that, because when you, especially if you didn't know what that Undine or Undinas are like water spirits, you'd be like, "Oh fuck, what's happening?"
Yeah, you'd be like, wait a minute, my girlfriend's a serial killer? What is
she
this
just,
shit?
Massively hyperbolic? Like, what's going on?
And also just says it with the straightest of faces. And then Johannes is like, no, you don't have to kill me. That's ridiculous. Basically is what he says. And then Undine makes the choice to kind of alter her own story. And she doesn't kill Johannes, not at first. And she falls in love with someone else. Accidentally. This guy, what was the character's name? Christoph, thank you. He is a diver. I don't think you'd say deep sea diver, but he wears those like deep sea kind of suits. He does like welding work, etc., underwater on like, piping systems and draining systems and, lakes and whatever. And he sees one of her lectures, he says, at the urban development office, which, by the way, you learn a lot about Berlin urban development.
You do.
from post World War II until, roughly the, reunification. You really do. There's 3 extended sequences in which Undine is giving, tour groups a lecture, which is, very charming. Anyway, so Christoph seeks her out in this cafe, and I don't really understand why this enormous fish tank explodes. But she grabs him. She's kind of standing there in a daze because she's like, I can't fucking believe that Johannes broke up with me. What a dick. And I'm going to have to kill him. And then Christoph's like, hey, you're kind of cool. And I saw you speak. And then the fish tank explodes and she grabs him and moves him out of the way. And she gets a bunch of glass, like shards stuck in her stomach that he then removes for her. And she's kind of like, Christoph. And then they have a relationship, and it's very sweet. And the thing that's really kind of fun about it is that you don't really see Undine's relationship with Johannes at all, but I kind of get the impression, based on the way that he broke up with her, that he's a massive douchebag. Whereas Christoph just is like, cannot get enough of her, but like not in a creepy way. He's like, hey, you're working on that lecture so hard. Like, I can't be there tomorrow because I have to work. Why don't you tell me? And she's like, no, I don't want to. He's like, nah, come on, it'll be awesome. And she tries to like have sex with him instead. Yeah, she tries to have sex with him instead. He's like, no, seriously.
Yeah, he's like, I want to know what you're going to say.
And then she's like, oh, okay. And then she like totally gets into it. And it's this very sweet moment between the two of them. And when she's done, he's kind of like, that was hot, or whatever he says. And, but then it gets, well, I don't want to say it gets weird because, the whole thing is kind of
weird. Kind of.
It's weird, but it's not weird. It's weird in the sense that we're not really used to stories like this. But at the same time, this movie makes its own rules and sticks by them. So, so in that sense, it's not weird. Although the whole, like the gap in the timeline, which is kind of a plot point. So Evan, Christoph has a diving accident and he's stuck underwater and deprived of oxygen for 12 minutes. And is in a coma, a medically induced coma, and is brain dead. Undine is told by the doctors and by his coworker, I think her name's Monica, that he's brain dead. And the night before, Christoph had left her this message being like, you lied to me. You were there at the cafe the first day we met waiting for someone else. And it's like, it comes out of nowhere and you're like, what the fuck is this? And then he has this accident. And then Undine is telling Monica, hey, I talked to him last night. That's crazy. And she's like, and Monica's like, what are you talking about? This accident happened 2 days ago. Where the fuck have you been? And so that whole thing, I was like, what? But I went with it. Why not? By that point, and that's when Undine is just kind of like, basically just, she doesn't fall apart, but she's like, well, I'm, you can kind of see the wheels turning in her head. She's like, this is the greatest guy ever. I have to go back to the sea. But first, what does she do first?
First, she goes to Johannes's house and he's swimming at night and she joins him in the pool and then she drowns him. And then she walks away and you can hear his current girlfriend calling him and then finding his, like you hear off screen her screaming because she finds his dead body clearly in the pool.
Ooh.
And
Yeah.
So clearly I take that as Undine was taking his life so she could essentially resuscitate Kristoff.
Yeah, I agree. Because after Undine kills Johannes, she walks into lake. What? I'm not sure where. She walks into the water, and then Kristoff sits up in his hospital bed, just takes this huge gasp of air, and he's like, "Where the fuck is Undine?" And he spends the rest of the movie trying to find her. He does, he finds her he goes diving for her. Actually, no, he doesn't go diving for her.
Yeah.
He's working.
And she goes to him.
And she approaches him. That's right. And she gives him a this deep sea diver trinket that was in the fish tank that broke. And she gives it to him. But they always videotape what they're doing underwater to see, I guess for a record. And he goes to the videotape and her hand is not on the videotape, but he has pulled out the trinket with him. And so I don't know, it made me sad that, they couldn't be together, even though this is, by the way, is 2 years later that he's diving and she finds him and he's going to marry Monica at this point. But, hey, that's what happens when you fall in love with a water nymph, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about this a long time ago when I saw this last year at New York Film Fest, and I loved it then, and I still love it. It's a very slow film. It unfolds and slowly and takes a while and takes its time, but I love that. And especially the last 30 minutes, I think, are the most wonderful. And just, it's so heartbreaking and tragic, and it's so beautiful that she gives up her life for him. And I mean, yeah, she kills another guy on the way too, but
right. But then what's even
right.
Yeah. But what's great about that is he understands the sacrifice she has made for him, and he kind of recommits himself to Monica, then and there. And it's just kind of like, wow, everybody learned the appropriate lesson. Holy shit.
That doesn't always happen.
And Johannes the asshole is dead. Win-win
all around. But it is really, that to me is even more heartbreaking and beautiful and amazing, is that you're right, is that he's inspired by her selfless act of love and sacrifice to be more committed and be more in love. And, and that's kind of the thing. Isn't that the thing? When you walk away from a beautiful relationship, or if someone walks away from you, or it ends mutually, or what have you, don't you hope you go into the next relationship supporting love and embracing love rather than being bitter about it? So yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful film. Also, really, I think it's really well acted, and I really love some of the cinematography and some of the colors and the color palette. Yeah, I really like this film.
Yeah, these are all German, or most of them are German names. Paula Beer, I'm assuming it's Bear, not beer. She is fantastic.
Yeah, she has a hypnotic stare.
Dude, no kidding.
Her eyes are boring into you.
You're just like, Jesus Christ. Someone's staring
it's intense.
at me.
That scene, and it's funny, it's the poster, but I love it so much. It's when Kristoff has his arm around her and she looks back and she sees Johannes with his girlfriend, and it's just her eyes, and it's her eyes are so intense.
Yeah, that's what I thought was so interesting about the poster. That poster, it makes it seem like this sort of mysterious kind of, ooh, who is Undine? But when you watch the movie, it's like, no, she's looking at her ex-boyfriend being an asshole walking past her. So, it kind of takes the mystery out of it. But it is I thought it was borderline great. I would be happy to watch this film again. So, yay! Megan, anything else to add before we move on to Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead?
No, just that it's a great film and you should see it.
Yes, and we're moving on from a great film to a piece of shit.
Wow.
So
coming in hot.
I can't speak for the two of you, but I'm going to guess that you're probably not far off from where I am.
No.
I don't think it's a piece of shit.
Oh,
I do not. I will be the dissenter. I don't care.
all right. No, why should you care? I mean,
don't.
you know, it's like if you're comfortable being vocally incorrect, cool, man.
Never.
So I think this is kind of a crummy movie. Megan, you disagree. Evan, where do you land?
Oh, well, I just want to be clear. I didn't say this was a great movie. I'm just saying
No.
I don't think it's a piece of shit.
Oh, no. You know what? I'm probably being a little bit too harsh because it is made with a lot of skill. I will say it's not like this is a bunch of boneheads who got together and they're like, let's make a zombie movie. But it's, you know.
Oh, there's a lot of issues, which I'm sure we will
get to.
dig into.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there were parts of this movie that I liked. And I think there was a good portion of it where I was really legitimately entertained. But there was a point, I think when we paused it, where there was still an hour and a half left of the movie. And I felt like a prisoner for the rest of that running time.
No.
Like where I just couldn't escape. And this movie had me trapped. And I was just like, please get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah. It's a long 2 hours and well, it's 2:28, but that includes the credits. So let's say 2:20. But let me give you the breakdown. So here's what's happening on the old IMDb. Following a zombie outbreak in Las Vegas, a group of mercenaries take the ultimate gamble. A group of mercenaries takes the ultimate gamble, IMDb, because the word you are using as your modifier is group.
Gamble? Vegas? Eh?
Yeah. A group of mercenaries takes the ultimate gamble, venturing into the quarantine zone to pull off the greatest heist ever attempted. Greatest heist ever attempted?
Well, I mean, I guess in that filmic world, sure.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, sure. So Dave Bautista, pardon me, as your leading man. Poor choice. But anyway.
See, I like Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
I think,
you know what? Generally speaking, I like him. I think that he was not good in this part.
Well, you know, I have an interesting theory, maybe not interesting, but I have a theory about that. And I think I think he's really great and I think he can be really charismatic, but I think he works much better when there is either a really good script, I mean, as many actors do, or it's the way he's working off of a really good cast. And we'll get into that. I actually think quite a few of the cast members are really great, like in other projects. But not in this necessarily. So I think that's the problem because one of my favorite Dave Bautista role is his role in Hotel Artemis. And he's so fantastic with Jodie Foster and she's obviously amazing. So I think that he's much better when he has a much better actor to work off of or kind of bounce off of and interact with. And I think here it's relying more on just him, which doesn't quite necessarily work. And unfortunately his energy with other people just doesn't seem to quite work well here.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't help that, you know, when he has that, it doesn't help that when he has that big back and forth with his daughter about why she hates him, that the dialogue in it is just like, it's like they cut and pasted it from like an after school special. It's so, first of all, it's entirely predictable. Second of all, well, you were never there for me after mom died. Oh, fucking cue the violins.
Yeah.
That actress also, I'm sorry, is not very good. And I think that speaks to my theory was why partially it doesn't work.
I'm coming in agreeing with you, Megan, that I think this script and his character is underwritten and he's not given much to work off of in terms of like co-stars that click with him. Especially his daughter. Yeah. Her character is so
like, well, why is there even that storyline? The storyline with her going to find the other Gita is the woman's name who's like disappeared. Just cut out the daughter, cut out Gita, and then you've lost 30 minutes from this fucking movie.
Well,
and I think it would be a lot better.
Yeah. And to your point, so listeners, there's a situation where his daughter is living and working in this refugee camp outside Las Vegas, and Gita is this woman that she knows who has 2 kids. And she's going to sneak back in for her own kind of like minor heist to get money to get her kids out of the camp and whatever. And so there's this like side quest where the daughter is like trying to get Gita. But Gita this is so frustrating. She's used essentially as like a prop or a MacGuffin in the movie where like, She's trying to save Gita, and then the movie just stops giving a shit about Gita as a person. Like, there's the helicopter. Gita's in the helicopter when they escape, and the helicopter crashes. We don't even know if Gita survives, and the movie doesn't care. It's so weird.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Doesn't give a shit one bit.
I think the only reason that whole storyline exists is just so that they can kill the fucking asshole.
The rapist guy?
The rapist, yeah. Cummings, that's his name. Of course,
but you could have killed him. You could have had zombies kill him the way Garrett Dillahunt is also killed, and he's also a douche in the movie. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. The other thing is, like, Garrett, I would put Garrett Dillahunt in there as he's truly quite a fine actor.
Oh, and he's great. Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
And to see him slumming it in this role, it's really disappointing.
Well, I mean, isn't he also on Fear the Walking Dead? Right. Like, so, like, he does have like zombie cachet, and I get why you would cast someone like him in this movie. But
but give him better material.
Yeah, his character is totally underused.
I mean, he does get eaten by a zombified tiger, which
it is so satisfying.
I would have appreciated that a whole lot more had I not already seen zombie animals in Resident Evil. But
listen, I'm always here for zombie. I'm always here for zombie animals.
I know, but we talked about this a little bit off mic, and we both had the same feeling, Megan, was that, like, this movie is fucking filled to the brim with ideas.
Yes.
But not one single idea is original. Not one.
No, can we actually dig into that? Yeah. Because I have a list of all the things it rips off.
Oh, yeah. I would love to hear it, because I did not take notes, because I was like, fuck that shit. But,
okay, so going in, so I had seen this on Twitter before I even saw the film. I saw that people were saying that this film is a redo of Aliens, or that it really references Aliens, especially with the character who has the red bandana, and she's referencing Vasquez. So I was like, okay, there's an allusion to Aliens, but actually it rips off Aliens so bad, from the you don't see them fucking each other over that Lily, her also known as the Coyote, says to Garrett Dillahunt, echoing Ripley's straight dialogue to Carter Burke. We also see the nod to Vasquez. Dave Bautista going back in for his daughter is exactly what Ripley does to go in and get Newt. When they finally escape outside and the helicopter's gone, exactly what happens to Ripley. The zombie king, Zeus, jumping onto the helicopter is very similar to the way the alien queen stows away. Like, I'm like, beat for beat, we are copying Aliens. And that's just one of the forms of media. There's also, they're pulling obviously from various zombie media. Obviously, Zack Snyder said that this was a spiritual successor to his remake of Dawn of the Dead. It pulls from that. It pulls from the original Dawn of the Dead, of course. It pulls from Day of the Dead, with zombies being far more sentient than we thought.
Zombieland, also, with like the opening.
Zombieland, warm.
Yeah.
Warm bodies with zombies having emotions and relationships. It even is kind of similar to I Am Legend and The Passage, both of which are about vampires, but they're kind of zombie-fied vampires. It also pulls from, like, the term shambler is not even an original term. It was popularized by The Last of Us with shamblers, but it came earlier in a game, SAS Zombie Assault. So it's like, there's just... it's pulling from so many things. And I'm sure I've even missed, I'm sure there are more. Because I know, Evan, you had said that there's so many Zack Snyder films that he's copying himself.
Well,
on.
You were mentioning like his Dawn of the Dead. Like there's a zombie baby in this. Like we've already seen him do that in his Dawn of the Dead. And these are fast zombies, kind of like in his Dawn of the Dead. I mean, like there's so much that this movie is incredibly derivative, and I wouldn't mind if I feel like it did more things better.
Yeah. Also, speaking of that too, even the notion, because I saw this in various articles, like, here's what it's doing new by having factions of zombies, like the alphas and the shamblers. No, that's actually not new. That's not new at all. It actually was done in the books, The Passage, the trilogy. So, I'm like, that's not even new.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like there are different classes of zombies and things like World War Z and like
yes,
even we're talking about zombified vampire movies. If you guys have ever seen Stakeland, like that movie, they have like different classes of vampire, but the vampires are done more like zombies in that movie.
Mm-hmm. No, now I want to see that though.
No, I haven't seen that. Yeah, I, you may have said this, Megan. I had to check out for a moment because there was some noise on one of the kids' monitors, but now I'm back. What? There was something that was such a huge ripoff, but of course now I can't think about it. Can we think? Is there anything good that you want to talk about?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think this is a really great premise. I think the notion of a zombie heist film is amazing. And I love the idea of having to go back into kind of a desolate city that's been overrun. I love that.
Escape from New York.
So for me, I think, yep, exactly. I think it's a great premise. It's not original necessarily, but it's a good premise. I think this is a good cast. A lot of the people in this, I think, are really great. Not necessarily in this film, but in other projects.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
Okay. I liked Vanderho or whatever his name was, Amari Hardwick. I
always like him. He's always good.
Yeah, he's very good. And then what the fuck? And then he's gotten bitten and he doesn't realize it. And then that's how the movie ends, with him being bitten on a plane. He's like realizes he's bitten. He's on a plane to Mexico, and it's like, come on.
That was a real kick in the nuts ending. I mean, I know that's like happens in zombie movies. Like you really don't expect many people to make it out, if anybody, but after like suffering through the rest of the movie, I was like, oh, great. Somebody will make it out. No.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but just the idea that like, apparently nobody's seen 28 weeks later, it's just, what's her name is going to get off I can't remember her name, Imogen Poots. Anyway, fuck that. We're not talking about 28 weeks. The German guy. I loved German guy. He cracked
Dieter.
Yeah.
Dieter.
Matthias Schweighofer.
Schweighofer, yeah. Hofer, because there's an umlaut.
Yeah, no, he's good. I liked him. I had seen him in Resistance, the Jesse Eisenberg movie. He plays Klaus Barb, and I thought he was actually really good in that too. And so it was fun. It was fun seeing him in a very different role where he was having a good time and not torturing people to death.
That is nice.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I liked the coyote, Nora Arnzader.
Oh.
You didn't like her?
No.
Oh, see, I liked her.
No.
You know what though? I liked the way that like she basically almost prevented she dropped the zombie queen's head. I loved that she gets speared by the zombie king, and then she's like, yeah, well, I got the zombie queen's head, and splat. But then, she's of course turned into zombie food. But
very true.
And I also like the fact that, as terrible as I think this movie is, at least Zack Snyder might not be a garbage human being, because Chris D'Elia originally played the helicopter pilot, and when he was accused of harassing men and women, but in particular women on the set of this movie, cut him out of the movie and replaced him with Tig Notaro. What
a great change.
I mean, I am so she's so much more interesting than Chris D'Elia ever was. He's just one of those comedians where you're like, I don't even understand how you became popular, because you suck. You're like the stand-up comedy version of what's the TV show with all the nerds that Jim Parsons was in?
Oh, Big Bang Theory?
Yeah, I hate that. I hate that show with a burning passion.
I fucking hate it. It's like show. It's 12 seasons of laugh-free television. Chris D'Elia is the stand-up version of that. Guy's never said a fucking thing that's funny, and he thinks he's amazing.
No, let's stop talking about him. He's so terrible. Let's not give him any more attention.
Yeah, Tig Notaro was a great choice, and I really enjoyed seeing her as the like cigar chewing, like wisecracking helicopter.
Oh, that was fantastic. I want to see her do that role in other things, because it was amazing.
Whose scenes were shot almost entirely on green screen, and occasionally Ana de la Reguera was with her to act opposite, but otherwise she was entirely on green screen, like with a another person not from the cast acting off screen with her so she could like have the right eye lines, and then the rest of the time dropped in via CGI, mostly seamlessly. There are a couple times where it's like, you're not standing in the right place. That's weird. But you know,
but
you can't win them all.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll give it a pass considering, you know, how hard that must have been. And yeah, I mean, and she's acting her ass off. I think she's doing a great job. I also, speaking of Ana de la Reguera, I love her. I have always loved her. I think she's great. I wish we could have seen more of her here. I also think Raul Castillo is an amazing actor. He's so good. He's fantastic in We the Animals and in other things too. And so he's really good. But I think the problem is that there's so many good actors in this, but they really are squandered. And it's unfortunate that they're just not well written. And I can't help but think of Aliens because it rips so heavily from Aliens. But that is a film that is way better paced and has way better character development in such a short amount of time. And you can do it. It can be done, but yet this isn't quite doing it. So
that's just not what Zack Snyder does, though. Zack Snyder just doesn't make good movies. So, I mean, that sounds like a stupid thing to say, but that's true. He's not interested in making something that like a normal person would find compelling. He's interested in watching his own dick swing on screen.
Yikes.
So, how else would you describe it? I mean,
I would say that it's very clear his commercial music video background, and that because his films oftentimes with the slow motion and the certain shots very much look like, with the soundtrack and the needle drops, very much look like a music video. And I don't even mean that necessarily as an insult. It's very stylized. It has a very specific visual appeal. And you know, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes I don't need a lot of plot or a lot of character development. I can just, you know, kind of be immersed in a very visually striking, aesthetically pleasing world. So yeah, so I had, despite my criticisms, I had way more fun with this than you guys did. But I think my frustration is that it is so derivative and that it could have been so much better, because I see the potential there and it's frustrating. And like, I think the scene with Chambers, that's her name, with the woman with the red bandana.
Loved her.
That scene is great, where she's fighting her way through the zombies and she's like stabbing them and she's like shooting them and punching them, and she finally comes through a window, and it's so great. And you know, Evan, you said a great point that, you know, not everybody's going to make it out and most people are probably going to die, and they tell us that right straight out of the gate in this film, like, oh, we're all going to die in this mission. And you know that, but at the same time, you want somebody to kind of have some kind of reward or satisfaction from surviving so much. And I wish we could have at least seen her survive to the next scene.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I was so disappointed that she ended up dead, because she was infinitely savable. Like, when she flew through the glass, like, she was totally savable, and they did not save her. And that was like, it was such a bummer.
Damn you, Raul Castillo, for shooting her gas tank.
I know. Why isn't he going up and like stabbing them or shooting them in the head? It doesn't make any sense.
It's right up there with the shooting the propane from Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. But yeah, Megan, you brought up something that really, you're talking about Zack Snyder's music video background. And I think, to me, one of the most atrocious parts of this movie is the musical choices. Like, the acoustic covers, oh my God. I hated the music in this movie. It was such a weird contrast to me. It just like did not fit. Like, even the Viva Las Vegas thing, like in the beginning, like, I just didn't think that worked at all in the way that it works, you know, in Zombieland, in the opening of Zombieland, when we're listening to like Metallica while zombies are getting mowed down. I don't know. I hated the music in this movie.
Or how about the use of the Cranberries' Zombie?
Which isn't even like, yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because that song is about the fucking Troubles in Northern Ireland. It's not about zombies.
No.
And it's like, all right, I can understand why you might have the music at the beginning, because the music, it's that lumbering, like, bum, bum, that bass line, that, because that's all that guy in the Cranberries does, is play that bass line. But anyway, you know, but then it's like, they start talking. They let Dolores O'Riordan like go into the thing. It's like with their tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their guns. And it's like, I know what this song is about. It's not about fucking stealing money in a Las Vegas zombie apocalypse. What the fuck? This is just stupid. It's just stupid. And by the way, I just want to mention that Zack Snyder's next movie is The Fountainhead. So get ready.
Oh, good God. Well, don't forget, there's also 2 prequels to this coming out too.
I just don't get it. I don't get it. I do not understand. It's kind of like, release the Snyder Cut. Why?
People love him. Some people, not everybody, obviously.
You know where he lost me? And not that I had seen a bunch of his movies beforehand, but I saw Sucker Punch and I was just like,
I hate Sucker Punch.
I hate it too.
Fuck,
it's so bad. And I've gotten into so many arguments with dudes about how, no, it's really about misogyny and critiquing it. I'm like, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it is not. Yeah.
When what's her name is like wearing a schoolgirl uniform, the whole Emily, what's her name? Browning. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Wearing a schoolgirl thing with the skirts. So it's like, this is not, you can't, have your cake and want to fuck it too. You got to choose one.
I'm sorry, but that was amazing.
Thank you. So,
for me, that comes down to, again, I think like his trailers for me, and I don't watch trailers anymore, but when I used to watch trailers, his trailers the films always looked good. Like I was like, oh, wow, whoever was cutting the trailers was doing a great job because they would look really interesting and compelling and visually striking. But when you've seen the same slow-mo over and over, and I know that's his shtick, I know that's his signature thing, and I get it. But when you're seeing the same thing over and over and you see great potential and it's just not there, it's so frustrating. But I did not hate this and I did not enjoy it. Like it was okay.
I mean, I could rant more about this movie, but I probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
I just want to say one more thing. I think there's some really strange choices that I'm kind of perplexed by regarding the kind of philosophical elements dropped in. Like kind of mythological, like Omari Hardwick goes on that kind of thing about time loops.
Oh yeah,
time, and we've been through this before, and then we see bodies, but is that just an illusion? Is that just in his head? Yeah. I don't know. And then Dieter says Götterdämmerung, and I was like, what the fuck is Götterdämmerung? And so I had to Google it, and it is Ragnarok. And then Wagner's Götterdämmerung plays. And I'm like, for Twilight of the Gods about Ragnarok. And I'm like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah. Actually, I'm really glad you brought that up because that was like kind of a stray thought that I had in my head of like, I was really frustrated that it brought this like, it brought us down this tangent and then never did anything with it because like, fine, I'm okay if that's what's actually going on in the movie, that they're stuck in some type of time loop. That would have been really interesting to me to go down that route. But they like lead you down this path and then they just abandon the idea. So like, why waste screen time on that?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the moment this movie lost me. In the first 5 minutes.
I was like the zombie fetus, but no.
Yeah. Well, when the army, drops their payload and it's got a zombie in it. I don't know which fucking one it is. Maybe it's Zeus, the zombie king.
It is. He is patient 0, supposedly, from what I've read.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So he comes out and he starts turning everybody into zombie meat. And then he attacks the 2 guys who aren't going to make it out, but you're supposed to think they're going to make it out. And he attacks them. And then it shows the 3 of them run off and look out over the lights of Las Vegas. Like, what about the other 14 guys? Did you like eviscerate all of them? Why aren't they with you? Why didn't your zombies scream and like the other guys be like, oh, I hear the zombie scream. Let's go see what Zeus is doing. None of that. Just stupid choices from the top.
I'm not going to lie. I kind of wanted to know more about the zombie queen who doesn't even have a name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's just the queen.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. But also, I mean, like, yeah, and now I'm thinking of more things like, anyway, I was like, almost everybody is killed, yes, but anyway. But I was like, but the people of color seem to die first. I was going to say, except Gita, but no, she dies too. Or maybe, we don't know.
Right. Yeah, we don't know. It's funny. Like, I usually kind of like forgive those sorts of things, but the first thing I noticed after the daughter, whose name I can't remember, Kate, of course, her name's Kate. I just looked at the thing, but Kate. She goes back to the helicopter and she sees Tig Notaro is dead. And then I was like, wait, where's Gita? And then there's no Gita. There's no Gita.
I just want to point out the editor who did this, isn't it the same editor who worked on Memento?
I think so.
Like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand how you did such great editing on that. And then, yeah, confusing. Like if I was an editor, I'd be like, wait, no, we need to know what happened to Gita.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, anyway, so that is this week's Spoiler Piece Theater, everyone. Let's run through this real quick. The amusement park, yay or nay?
Yay.
Yeah, I would say yay. I mean, it's less than an hour, and it's intense.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You can see that on Shudder. Changing the Game, you can see on Hulu. Is that a yay or a nay?
It's a yay.
Yay for me too. Undine is coming out in theaters and I think next week on demand, but don't quote me on that. Yay or nay, Megan?
Yay, definitely yay.
Yay! And then Army of the Dead is already out on Netflix, and how do we feel about it, gang? Nay.
I am not going to say a nay, surprisingly, because I even problematically, and even when there's issues, I still love a zombie story. So
okay. Fair enough.
But you don't have to rush out and watch it.
Yeah, Netflix will just shove it in your face anyway when you like open up your profile. Anyway, so those are the movies. Before we do anything else, I want to say thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Thank you for taking the show out of our hands each week and, making it sound like a show. You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you can get podcasts. You can find our website, spoilerpiece.com, if you wanted to go there. If you want to find us on social media, we're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. You can email us if you wanted to get in touch, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. You can tell me how much you love Zack Snyder, and his version of Watchmen is so much better than the HBO version of Watchmen, neither of which I've seen, by the way.
Oh, the TV show is much better.
Yeah, agreed.
Or if you wanted to tell me that, in a voicemail, you could give us a call.
At 862-21-PEACE.
And leave us the voice message and be like, Dave, you're so vitriolic. And I would say, yes, you are correct.
Always and always.
Yeah. And if you really like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. And if you really, really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. This week's exclusive audio was a patron's choice. Our patron chose The People vs. Larry Flint, starring Woody Harrelson. That is a spirited conversation over on the Patreon. And if you to join to get the exclusive audio every month, it starts at a rate of $5. For $10 a month, you can tell us exactly what you want us to watch, which is what this patron did. Got all kinds of tiers. And on that note, we would like to thank each of our patrons.
Yes, we want to give a huge thank you to Bob Chipman, Chris Wilkinson, Davida Margolin, Deirdre Crimmins, Christopher Jensen, Max Coville, Mike, Lord of the Sith, Rory Glynn, Sean Pensionar, Shauna Harris, Shelley McCaskill, Shona Glasgow, William Gahan, and Zach Pigeon. Thank you so much, patrons.
Thank you.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies for Some Places. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide, Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionS World and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS. And if you have the time, go check out Binge Movies.
Yeah, go check out Binge Movies. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.